Headlines this hour. The 6 learners who died when their school bus collided with a train in Mpumalanga late last month will be laid to rest today. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government has made progress in improving the lives of women, but that more needs to be done. And the National Prosecuting Authority's investigating directorate says it will reinstate the Estina dairy farm case as soon as possible. It's just gone at 12 o'clock. Welcome to Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. We are broadcasting live from our studio in Johannesburg, and in the next 2 hours we will review some of the biggest stories of the week. Good afternoon, I'm Gustav Greyling, and we invite you to join us to give your comments or ask your own questions. You can give us a call on our studio number. It's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Now, Mpumalanga Premier Mandla Ndlovu says government will be conducting inspections on all scholar transport services across the province to ensure the safety of learners. He says government will not hesitate to scrap unroadworthy transport providers. Ndlovu has sent his tributes to the 6 families of the children killed during the collision between a school bus and a goods train last week on the R104 between Arnot and Wonderfontein in Mpumalanga. For more, we now cross live to our SABC News reporter, Nhlanhla Jele. Nhlanhla, good afternoon, and thanks so much for being here with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Gustav, and to the viewers at home. Indeed, sad moments that are taking place here this afternoon. Obviously, in the morning, we saw the various speakers taking to the stage, just sending their condolences to the family. Some are friends, some are relatives. I'll just move out of the shot to show you what is happening behind me, Gustav. As you can see, they are slowly making their way to the different graveyards that they're going to lay their children to rest at. We do understand that the families obviously opted to bury their loved ones or their children, in this case, at different cemeteries. If you can see, the cars are slowly moving. We saw earlier on, even in the hall, even the overflow space that the government had set up for people to come. Community members were out in their numbers. Even on the street, Gustav, it was packed to capacity. We saw people coming to pay condolences to the families who lost their children in this tragic accident. And also, as you mentioned, Mpumalanga Premier speaking of investigating what the cause of this accident was. But we also saw the school governing body chairperson of Morelech Combined School telling the government that it's time for them to listen when they complain about scholar transport. It's time for them to do the same thing that is being done, Gustav, in other regions at Morelech Combined School, saying that this accident could have been prevented. We saw another speaker coming saying that this accident could have been prevented if only government was listening to what the people on the ground are saying, to what they are saying in their meetings when they're meeting all the time, just to discuss how the school is performing. Morelech Combined School in this area is one of those schools that is doing very well. So now you can imagine with this tragedy that struck the school. Gustav, we also spoke to the learners who were in the bus. We also spoke to the learners who are classmates to these learners who lost their lives. Of course, they are saying they say they are sad. They say that they were traumatized when they heard this news. Others who were in the bus came here because they were discharged from hospital. Others were wearing slings. Gustav, they had slings to show that they were injured. They underwent operations. So they just came here this morning and this afternoon just to say goodbye to their friends and to say they are pleading with government, Gustav, that it's been long overdue, that they've been complaining about that crossroad where the accident happened, saying they've been pleading to ask the government to say, please build a bridge, because a train and cars or small vehicles cannot share a same space. So these are some of the sentiments that we're hearing here on the ground, to say it's also important to vet the bus drivers that are being sent to the schools to pick up the learners, whether they do it in the mornings, Gustav, or they do it in the afternoon. But it's important that such a vetting is taking place for the safety of their learners. Others saying if government doesn't get a wake-up call from this incident, they are scared such an incident might happen again. Good stuff?
For the rest of the afternoon, are they now moving to separate graveyards?
Yes. So now, because it's 6 learners, meaning it's 5 different families. Remember, one family lost 2 learners. So now they are splitting. Obviously, government officials who are here, we saw earlier on the Deputy Minister of Education, Regina Mhaule, is also here. The Deputy Minister of Correctional Services, and the Premier, the MEC of Public Works and Roads and Transport is also here. We also saw the MEC of Education in the province is also here. So they are splitting, obviously going to the different families, going to the different graveyards just to support the families. As I said earlier on, the different families, because of the traditional or cultural practices they choose to observe, they opted not to go to the same burial sites or graveyards. So now what is happening, they are all moving to separate graveyards. People are actually getting into taxis and they're being transported to the graveyard of their choice, to support the people. But honestly speaking, with these families, it's one big community here in Mafube village. All the families are actually close to each other. One could easily say they are neighbors because it's a walking distance from one family to the other. In the morning when we were at the Sibanyoni homestead, we could literally see the other homestead on the side, could literally see another homestead on another side. So all these learners were all from the same area. We also heard people saying it's sad what happened here for the learners to die on their way back to school. For them it was the thing of they can see that they are already home, but for the tragic accident to happen, and also news on the bus driver is still, government is still mum on where he is, what is happening with that case. We understand, Gustav, that he has not been arrested. He has been discharged because he escaped this accident with slight injuries. So he was discharged last week already. We were told that statements are being collected from the other learners who were in the bus, just so that they can compile their investigation. And as you've heard, the Mpumalanga Premier Mandla Ndlovu saying they're going to investigate and ensure that they bring justice to the families who lost their loved ones. Gustav?
Thank you so much for your reporting this afternoon. SABC News reporter Nhlanhla Jele joining us live from Mpumalanga today at that funeral service. Now, moving on to this story, the National Prosecuting Authority's investigating directorate says it will reinstate the Estina dairy farm case as soon as possible. The case, which emanates from the alleged looting of the Free State Department of Agriculture and Rural Development between July 2012 and April of 2014, was struck off the roll by the High Court in Bloemfontein due to undue delays. However, the court can reinstate the matter on condition that the prosecution gets its ducks in a row.
It is to say that in a big case such as this, one would expect that the state would have their house in order before they pursue a case like this. However, one must also realize the cost involved. If we were, for example, at an instance where the accused would be incarcerated, that would mean at this stage they would have been set free from incarceration, and the state will have to again arraign the accused to come to court. It could be costly in terms of legal representation, but we must also look at the fact that the courtroom was booked out for a number of weeks for this matter to be heard, where other cases could have taken prevalence.
Right. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government has made progress in improving the lives of women, but that more needs to be done. Speaking at the Women's Day celebration in Pofadder in the Northern Cape, the president said South Africa is still deeply traumatized by violence against women and children.
This violence is a betrayal of our Constitution. It is an affront to our common humanity. In recent years, we have worked together to fight gender-based violence and femicide. Guided by our National Strategic Plan, we have introduced new laws that protect survivors of gender-based violence, that improve the response of the police and ensure harsher sentences to perpetrators.
Authorities in Riverlands outside Malmesbury in the Swartland are monitoring a fourth dam, fearing that its wall might burst if rain continues to pour down in this area. Humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers continues to provide relief aid to the community after two dams burst earlier in the week. The residents' homes were severely affected. About 150 people are still being housed at a local church hall and at the Tusong Community Centre.
The small community of the rural town woke up to harrowing scenes early yesterday when water from two farm dams above their homes came rushing uninvited and unabated. The residents say they cannot wait to go back to their homes and rebuild their lives.
My son couldn't even sleep last night because of what happened, and we had to sleep at my brother-in-law's house, and he was very traumatized, and so are we. But this is the first time we had to go through something like this, and it's something we won't, that will stay with us for a long, long time. My house was flooded. Structure is still standing, but the water went through. But I'm one of the lucky ones, I think.
For now, they are sheltered at the local Tusong Community Service Centre and the local church hall.
Well, we want to thank Gift of the Givers, who has provided us a great service, providing food for us, blankets for us. They have been a great help, Gift of the Givers, and the team, working tremendously, tirelessly, and serving the community of Riverlands.
Authorities say slightly over 200 people were worst affected and that the cause of the dam collapse will be further investigated.
For now, the immediate need is to do humanitarian relief. I can assure you that subsequent to relieving the immediate need, there will be an investigation led by the Department of Water Affairs. And that investigation will be determined, one, what the cause was of these dams bursting their walls, and two, like you are asking, could we have avoided this disaster here in Riverlands?
Humanitarian aid has been pouring in since yesterday, but residents are without water and electricity. The disaster caused power outage and water pipes have been damaged.
These people have lost everything. There's no electricity, there's no clean drinking water, so it's impossible for them to make food and to feed their families. So we are playing that role in providing their daily meals on a daily basis. We have provided blankets, as all their belongings are completely drenched and washed out. Blankets, personal hygiene care packs, warm clothing, and coming from a meeting now, there's quite a concern, as we know, with the current, with the two dams bursting, it washed away the water pipes. So there will be no water in the area for a couple of weeks. We are providing clean bottled drinking water, but that's not a long-term solution. We are trying to source our water tankers, which are currently busy in other provinces. We could see if we could steal maybe one or two from those provinces just to assist those communities. As we know, it's three areas: Tassenberg, Riverlands and Chatsworth.
With more rain expected, it is not clear at this stage when residents will return home. Disaster management remains on high alert. Blamle Maneli, SABC News, Cape Town.
Welcome back. Now, the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, Mosa Chabane, has called for the speedy conclusion of investigations into the citizenship status of the former Miss South Africa contestant, Chima Adina. Now, Chabane says preliminary investigations raise concerns and has called on the department to finalise its investigation. This comes after Home Affairs found prima facie evidence suggesting that Adetshina's mother may have committed fraud and identity theft. Now, for more, we bring in a former Miss South Africa judge, and that is Professor Thuli Madonsela. Professor Madonsela, good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Good afternoon, Gustav, and to the viewers. Thank you for the privilege.
And we need your experience as a former judge and as a former public protector in this story. So when asked to judge the pageant, what was your understanding of the role and possibly the service that you'd extend?
Of course, our role was to assess which of the young ladies contesting to be an ambassador of our country was fit to be that ambassador in the name of Miss SA, personality, their passions, the work they've been doing up until now, etc. Of course, our role did not extend into digging into their IDs, because whatever they submit as their ID validly issued by Home Affairs would be assumed to be enough, as in any other competition, including jobs. Nobody goes to Home Affairs to check whether the basis on which your ID was issued was correct.
So your perspective then, post this whole Chima Adina debacle, did it change what Miss South Africa is actually about?
No, it hasn't changed what I think Miss South Africa is about. I do understand that it is also about opportunities. These young women come into Miss South Africa as a gateway into entrepreneurship, into social enterprise opportunities, and just generally into positioning themselves to society and to the world as a brand. And therefore, I'm not too surprised that there are obviously competitive concerns about who gets these opportunities. What I was concerned about was, how do we express concerns if we do have them? I mean, if somebody, for example, thought a particular Miss South Africa was not a South African and they had real evidence to that effect, the best thing would have been to whistleblow to Home Affairs and ask them to look into it. And I think the way it was done, and I do understand where people come from, but it has created a climate of mistrust between our country and the rest of the continent.
So what about the importance then of the public's opinion on the significance of the pageant and the representativity, and how South Africans view their identity through this contest?
Well, it's very important that South Africans identify with Miss South Africa, because Miss South Africa is one of the ways we represent ourselves to the world. It's just like right now we have sportsmen and women representing us at the Olympics. So they are our extended identity. I would not want South Africans to disengage from Miss South Africa. It is important that they see this as an extension of who they are. That said, truths, we should stick to the truth, no lies. I mean, there were concerns that Chidima might not be a South African, but the stories that were put to the public domain, which is why my center, my colleague Temba and I entered the frame, we're saying you can't be a South African if your parents are not South African. That's not true. People become South African in various ways. That includes being naturalized. Somebody could have entered this country 7 years ago. They got a permanent residence within 2 years. And within that in the next 5 years, they have an opportunity to request to be naturalized as citizens. If you have had a permanent residence permit for 5 years, you can be naturalized. So we entered the fray as part of our legal literacy to say, yes, you have a right to be concerned about the persons who are representing us as South Africans should be South Africans. But number one, lies should not be used. Two, the law should be interpreted accurately. But thirdly, it should all be done from an Ubuntu perspective. I even lastly brought to the fore the fact that our own young people contest in some of these competitions or overseas. America's got talent, Britain's got talent. The difference, of course, is that the rules in those competitions allow non-citizens to participate. In our case, you only have to be a citizen to contest Miss South Africa. There was even a lie. The main person in this particular debate lied and said Miss South Africa changed the rules to allow married people and mothers to be part of this competition just to make sure that they allow these people to come in. And that's a lie. The rules were changed the year I was a judge. They were changed by Miss Universe.
So, of course, there's context and there's evolution to this. Is it perhaps time to rethink the melting pot of race and culture that is the South Africa of today, an extremely diverse country, and that the Miss South Africa contest should therefore perhaps then reflect on those kind of developments?
Well, Miss South Africa does reflect the diversity of our country as it stands. Anybody who is a South African, that's why I would like every South African to understand that if you are South African, even if you became South African last year and you're contesting this year, and you came into this country, let's say 6 years ago, but last year you became a South African and you're coming from Algeria, if you are a South African, at the point at which you enter this competition, you're allowed to enter this competition. But what we have to educate our people about, yes, is to embrace the diversity of who we are as South Africans. We come from different parts of the world, and we can make our diversity a curse, or we can make it our superpower. And I'm borrowing here from the words of Justice Ismail Mohammed. That said, though, we have to manage immigration properly so that it's not crowded at the bottom because of poor immigration. I mean, a lot of the grievances come from the fact that a lot of people feel displaced. And then there are vultures that are mining the genuine concerns of our people for political mileage.
So what has emerged now from this incident is the issue of possible fraud in the legal citizenry of Mrs. Adina, of Miss Adina. So if you put on your hat as a former public protector, are we seeing the fruition of perhaps decay in the state that you yourself investigated as a public protector?
Well, the issue of identity theft and duplicate IDs has been a major problem in this country before I became public protector and during my time as public protector. And we'd asked Home Affairs to do a systemic investigation into this. And the PPM case has then said to Home Affairs, you can't just arbitrarily block people's IDs because they're duplicated. So identity theft is real. And some of the people who have come on my Twitter or X timeline have indicated that I personally was a victim of identity theft. And Home Affairs then blocked my own ID, and for the last 8 years or so, I've not been able to move forward. And I empathize with those people, and I urge Home Affairs to abide by the PPM case, where it was said, don't block everyone. Do a purger process that allows you to at least verify what's going on, and you can get a preliminary view, really, of who is the imposter. And to those who have been affected by identity theft, which has led to their ID being duplicated, my heart goes out to you. That's criminal, that's unscrupulous, and we really do need to make sure we put a stop to it.
Let me ask you this lastly. There's the important issue of what we would call Afrophobia versus Xenophobia. Is this nation capable of making a distinction between the two, and if so, how?
I must say that I don't want to label South Africans as either xenophobic or Afrophobic. I would say there's a creeping nationalism, which is a global trend that we're seeing, a creeping nationalism. And there are two drivers of that toxic nationalism. One is limited resources. Secondly is bad management of immigration. And therefore, why do people tend to target fellow Africans as opposed to the others? It's because it hurts most at the bottom. You and I are operating in middle class and higher levels where we can negotiate our own space. So people who are struggling to find employment in restaurants, in farms, or for people who have lost their homes to gentrification of the social housing market, it's a different story. And therefore, I don't think we should call them Afrophobic or xenophobic. I think we should just say to our people, your concerns are valid, but the way you should prosecute your concerns should be tempered with Ubuntu. We can demand justice. We can get justice without being the kind of cruel people like the ones who invented colonialism and apartheid. I mean, if you look at what's happening in the rest of the world, former victims of cruelty then become cruel people themselves when they find somebody who they consider to be less than them. At the end of the day, in terms of Ubuntu, we are all Abantu, and everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And I don't think Chidima was treated with dignity.
Thank you so much for your time and for your insight. A former Miss South Africa judge and former public protector, Professor Thuli Madonsela. Welcome back. You're watching Week in Review on the SABC News channel. Now, the South African Airways Group will not be able to present its 2023 and 2024 financial accounts by the September deadline. And that's according to Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation Minister Marupene Ramokgopa. So in a letter to the Speaker of Parliament, Toko Didiza, she requested an extension for submitting SAA's audit report and the financial accounts. SAA financials appear to be delayed once more, and the airline has been criticised for not reporting its financial problems. The airline has not complied with the legal need to release the financial statements within 6 months of the conclusion of its fiscal year. And that's despite a reported 150 million rand loss in the first 3 months of the financial year. So how may this impact the airline? We are joined now by George Nell, who is a senior business rescue practitioner, to unpack this for us. George, good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here.
So we've seen this before, where the national carrier had failed to submit the necessary financial documents. What are some of the reasons for such delays?
I don't know the reasons for such delays. They have done this before business rescue, and now the company's out of business rescue, and usually the auditors maybe have got some problems and some questions to the board, and then the publication of the annual financial statements is delayed.
So what is the importance of providing the financial statements? What can we read in the balance sheets and the income statements and the cash flow statement?
The company's life is reflected in its balance sheet, both on solvency and liquidity basis. So it needs to be published. This is a state-owned enterprise, and it is even more necessary to see how the monies were spent of the taxpayers and the like. Private entities, maybe the directors and shareholders are the same people. Here we've got the broader public that's got a very, very high level of interest in the financial situation. We have lost billions of rand. I read in preparation for this interview, to the tune of 80 billion rand is reportedly being lost. So the financial statements are of paramount importance in a state-owned entity and in other entities.
So how do the submission of these financial statements then help to create business confidence, for instance, in the national airline?
At this stage, I think the confidence in the specific entity is very low. All across the board of state-owned companies, there's a big problem. There's a new bill that President Ramaphosa has prepared, which will regulate all these companies. But confidence is very low in the state-owned companies since the state capture situation occurred a few years ago. I think it could have been 10 years ago now. I was thinking about it. And confidence is very low. Aviation has taken a big knock. SAA was already in financial difficulties before COVID. COVID came along and then actually broke a lot of aviation companies. So to pick up the national carrier again to the glory days before the financial distress, I don't think that will happen soon.
How easy is it to run an airline these days, a national carrier, in any country in the world?
Not too easy. They go belly up all over. Unfortunately, we saw an air crash last night in South America, which is tragic, and they go belly up all over financially. But there's underlying things and knock-on effects that if an airline doesn't work, the infrastructure doesn't work, the companies that do business with that airline, in South African context, we need jobs and we need SAA to work so that the jobs can be created in the smaller companies that serves SAA to retain jobs and to actually get jobs going again.
So you've mentioned this earlier. To date, SAA's burden on taxpayers is nearing that 80 billion rand mark when the prior losses and the bailouts plus the more recent holes in its pockets are added up. Is money basically being pumped into a black hole with no fruitful results?
I only can say what I read in the reports and the 80 billion rand. I haven't checked the financial statements as yet. I was asked a few years ago on your TV station to comment on the not lodging of the annual financial statements. At that stage, that was just after business rescue. Now a few years down the line, the company is now out of business rescue in the hands of the board of directors, and the financial statements is not being lodged at present. So you can just ask questions. The Public Finance Management Act has got certain regulations and rules. The Companies Act has certain regulation and rules. And the interaction with the licensing authorities, aviation authorities, and the Companies Intellectual Property Commission, CIPC, is also applicable. So there's a lot of things and rules that's not being adhered to. And that brings about a situation of mistrust. If you want to invest in a company, you would like to know that the company is making money, and that is why the companies exists.
What do you expect to see in those statements when they eventually do get published? We mentioned that loss, the possible 150 million rand loss.
I expect to see a big loss. I expect to see that the company is financially distressed. That's only speculation. I cannot say that is the truth, but you asked me to speculate, but so I'll venture on that side. The definition for financial distress to put the entity into business rescue is that the entity is not going to be solvent for the next 6 months and or cannot pay its debts as they are payable in the next 6 months. So maybe business rescue is a good option for the new SAA to reshuffle its affairs and so on. But I expect to see that is only reading the reports and reading the lay of the land. I cannot say that is the truth.
How will something like this impact any possible equity partner, for instance?
As a South African, I was looking at the equity partner, and the negative results. If I was in the position at all, advised the equity partner, if they haven't got deep pockets and have a proper business rescue plan and solvency and liquidity will pick up, they will surely withdraw. If it's a financial decision, surely a financial decision maker will say, listen here, I can put my money in another company where I can make some money. If it's a philanthropical type of approach, then yes, maybe you can give some money to a company, but you would like to have control of the board and make sure that all the contracts and all the management of the finances and other management is done in a way that can get the company back to solvency and liquidity.
So, George, as a business rescue practitioner, what are some of the strategies and the mechanisms needed to keep this airline afloat on a practical level?
Well, the company is not in business rescue, so it's just a practical situation where a company that's not in business rescue must pick up its revenue. And if there's a bridging finance necessary, get that necessary bridging finance. International financiers are not queuing up to invest in South Africa. Our situation has bettered the last year with the new government in place and politics is being settled. So the one thing is you have to have bridging finance to get to the point where your cash flow and your projections so that you will start to make a profit. If it's 9 months down the line, you have to work out what is your shortfall and then finance that in some kind of way. That will be my way of dealing with it. Cut overheads. The moment you cut overheads, you cut your ability to have revenue. And that is a difficult thing. So the balancing act and the actuaries and chartered accountants should be making models all over to see what they need and then fund that with some funding from state owned, state funding, the shareholder and or international funding or private equity. Private equity has always been on the cards. Proper private equity. I don't say the present people are not proper private equity, but private equity investors and people that wants to make money and can run an airline.
George, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. That was George Nell, and he's a senior business rescue practitioner talking to us about the situation at SAA. Now, South Africa's manufacturing production declined by 5.2% in June compared to June last year. Negative contributors included basic iron and steel, metal products and machinery, motor vehicles and parts, as well as food and beverages. This compares to a decline of 1.2% in May on an annual basis. These annualized numbers are indicative of a difficult operating environment for manufacturers, but more recent data saw the manufacturing sector putting in a better showing.
While the annualized performance of the manufacturing sector indicates a level of strain in the sector, nearer-term data suggests a more positive trend, with manufacturing recorded up 0.9% in the 3 months ended June.
The 0.9% expansion in the manufacturing sector in the second quarter of the year is very encouraging and should go a long way in supporting a GDP recovery in the second quarter of the year following a very sharp and broad-based contraction in the first quarter. However, on a year-on-year basis, we still have a decline of more than 5%, which clearly demonstrates the general pressure in the economy.
Economists believe a much steadier supply of electricity in the run-up to the end of the second quarter will have contributed to the better quarterly number, as well as some tentative improvements in the rail and port sector. But even though manufacturing production was up in the second quarter, constraints on the demand side of the sector persist.
It would have helped manufacturing, but it comes at a bad time where the demand side is not. So, it's one thing to have the possibility on the supply side to produce, but unfortunately to have, obviously, the demand not being there. So that's really now what is beating us, because you will have wanted that manufacturing to ramp up. But at the same time, you're then concerned about, yes, I've got now the resources, I've got the electricity, I've got the capacity, but I don't have the market because, you're looking at the key, when you look just at the key areas where we face, so basic iron and steel, non-ferrous metals, those are really, those kinds of infrastructure, production kind of minerals, motor vehicles, obviously very, very well. And then, of course, what we're seeing in terms of food and beverages. So those are all key demand areas that tell us indications of where the consumer is, where the manufacturer is, and where growth itself is. And that's where the key areas where you're seeing the tumbling coming from. And it really does tell us a story of a global slowing down and a global demand slowdown.
Concerns remain that global and local demand for products may remain subdued, given the challenge posed by the relatively higher cost of living. And while the manufacturing sector is expected to make a positive contribution to the overall second quarter GDP number, it's not expected to shoot the lights out for the balance of the year. Nampumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Welcome back. Now, Morari Cholota, initially a key state witness, now turned accused number 17 in the multi-million rand asbestos roof removal case, is expected to appear in court in Bloemfontein on Monday. Cholota, who is the former PA of the then Premier of the Free State, Ace Magashude, has been at the centre of the 255 million rand case. It relates to the alleged irregular awarding of the multi-million rand contract in the Free State in October of 2014. Now, the accused accused in the matter include former Free State Premier Ace Magashule and 17 other co-accused, including companies. And they face charges of corruption and money laundering, among others.
Moradi Cholota has been at the core of the long-standing asbestos roof removal case. The irregular contract came under the spotlight in 2020 when various officials, including former Human Settlements MEC Olimla Mleli and Ace Magashule, first appeared in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court for this matter. It is in the same year when Cholota's name was mentioned as one of the state's witnesses. The court ordered Magashule not to contact his former PA, emphasizing that she is now a state witness. In 2021 November, the tables turned when the High Court heard that the state has issued a warrant of arrest for her, citing that she failed to comply with the state to come back to the country and that she will be added as an accused on the matter.
I think it's painful. In a foreign country, the person they said was a state witness, the person they forced to implicate me in the case, now they are charging an innocent person. Because it's harassment, it's part of harassment. Maybe she will give in and do this and that. They can have any witness against me. They will never find anything wrong I've actually done. Because it's a political trial. And the Americans and their spies are exposed.
Since then, the NPA has been in the process of extraditing her. However, it maintained that her absence will not affect the trial.
I ever need to place on record that I think I have an obligation in that regard, that accused number 70, Charlotte,
yes,
has been arrested.
In the United States of America?
Yes.
Okay.
Over the past weekend. She will appear on Monday as stated.
In October 2015, the DA then reported the matter to the Public Protector. In her report, the then Public Protector Busisi Mkhwebane found that the contract was not cost-effective and that government did not get value for money. The DA in the Free State says Cholota's extradition will help the NPA in their quest for justice.
The DA in the Free State welcomes the extradition of the personal assistant of Ace Magashule. This will hopefully strengthen the hand of the NPA and ensure that justice will be done in the asbestos case.
Cholota is expected to appear next week Monday in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, while the trial on the matter is set for the 15th April to the 23rd June next year. Makhala Masting, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Right, the MK party spokesperson, Tlambulo Ndlela, has confirmed the removal of 18 of its MPs from Parliament. He said 12 of them were already sworn in.
No, as you know, we throughout our campaign, we've had a strategy, one to engage with religious leaders, traditional leaders, and so on and so forth, and which is a promise we made because we said their voices are not heard in Parliament, and our leadership in Parliament ought to be reflective of society. So that is obviously a broken promise if we don't fulfill on that, and that would be a place to start. Including certain, former executives of state-owned entities that you've seen some of the names like Montana and the likes, Brian Molefe, who are strong and who understand what we're trying to achieve here. And that's that. Nothing more, nothing less. The decision to include those people is not a President Zuma decision. It was a leadership of the party decision. We sat and we crafted exactly who and how we're going to go about it. For instance, President Zuma was not supposed to be there. That was not our strategy.
Right. Cabinet has highlighted efforts to improve security and public transport as well as tackle growing water challenges. The Minister in the Presidency, Kumbotshun Chaveni, briefed the media in Pretoria on the outcomes of the latest Cabinet meeting.
The Minister in the Presidency has briefed the media on the outcomes of the Cabinet meeting. Cabinet has expressed satisfaction in the cracking down of illicit activities. It has reaffirmed its call on the public to work with law enforcement to create a safer environment for the country.
Cabinet welcomed the continued successes of law enforcement agencies in the arrest of members of organized crime syndicates and gangs as part of the ongoing fight against crime. Operation Chanela of the South African Police Service has also ensured the arrest of 766,237 suspects for various crimes, and 161,752 of these were wanted suspects for priority crimes such as murder, cash in transit heist, armed robberies, rape, car hijacking, amongst others.
Cabinet has noted ongoing developments on water security. Currently, South Africa is in a period of water scarcity, and the Minister of Water and Sanitation has committed to brief the public on developments on a fortnightly basis.
The Department of Water and Sanitation has established a water partnerships office together with SALGA and the DBSA, aimed at assisting municipalities to drive initiatives to diversify and develop alternative water resources to ensure water security.
Cabinet has commended improvements in the public transport sector.
Cabinet welcomed the introduction of new high-tech trains on the Central Line in the city of Cape Town by the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, commonly known as PRASA, an agency of the Department of Transport. The service has been extended from Nyanga to Mandalay Station. The trains will utilize modern signaling system from Langa to Mutual Line to enhance the safety and reliability of the rail service.
Nshaveni has extended Cabinet's invitation to all South Africans to take part in Women's Month celebrations. Next week, the GCIS and Department of Women will hold a briefing on the activities planned for the month. Zara Groenewald, SABC News, Pretoria.
Right, this week South Africans took to social media to pay tribute to the veteran actress Connie Chum. Her family has confirmed that she died on Tuesday at the Garden City Hospital in Johannesburg at the age of 72. The multi-award-winning Chum is known for her role in the international film Black Panther and local productions such as Zone 14 and Gomorrah, among many others. Her family has asked for privacy during this period. Now, the South African Broadcasting Corporation have extended their long-standing broadcast deal with the South African Football Association. The public broadcaster made the announcement at its headquarters in Auckland Park this past week. SAFA President Danny Jordan also revealed that the association is bidding to host the next Women's Africa Cup of Nations and the FIFA World Cup in 2031. The two parties have been working together for the past 32 years, and the new deal will include broadcasting all the SA national teams, the Women's Hollywood Bets League, as well as grassroots and development level football. SABC's Group Chief Executive Officer Nomsa Chaberi explains the deal.
SAFA and SABC have renewed their partnership that has been really holding us in good stead for the past 32 years, that has allowed South Africans to be part of the football journey. So we have an agreement in place now for another 4-year cycle. And what's exciting about this new cycle is also that it's not just limited, to just the senior teams, for example, Bafana. It's also got the Banyana matches, including the Hollywood Bets League, which is critical. But also, for me personally, I love the fact that we are going to be able to showcase the grassroots, leagues, which are very critical for the future of this country.
In review here on the SABC News channel. Stay with us, the news will continue at the top of the hour. Headlines this hour. The Gauteng MEC for Finance and Economic Development, Lebogang Maile, urges the Reserve Bank to prevent the liquidation of the black-owned footwear company Drip. Authorities say there were no survivors from yesterday's plane crash in Brazil. The passenger plane with 61 people on board crashed in a residential area in Vinhedo in Brazil's Sao Paulo state. And the Hawks suspect that military-related training was being carried out on a farm in Modimolle in Limpopo after seizing a cache of firearms and ammunition on the premises. Welcome back. You are with Weekend Review live here from our SABC News studio in Johannesburg. Good afternoon. I'm Gustav Greyling, and please join us with our discussions with your questions or your comments. You can give us a call on our studio number. It's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Now, the Hawks suspect that military-related training was being carried out on a farm in Modimolle in Limpopo after seizing a cache of firearms and ammunition on the premises. No arrests were made. Now, the discovery comes 2 weeks after police swooped on an illegal military training camp in White River in Mpumalanga. 95 Libyan nationals were arrested and charged with contravening the Immigration Act. They are due back in court later this month. Authorities say there were no survivors from yesterday's plane crash in Brazil. The passenger plane with 61 people on board crashed in a residential area in Vinhedo in Brazil's São Paulo state. Officials said only one home in the local condominium complex had been damaged, while none of the residents were hurt. The causes of the accident are being investigated. The Gauteng MEC for Finance and Economic Development, Lebogang Maile, says township-based businesses that struggle to comply with tax laws should be treated with leniency. He's urged the Reserve Bank to prevent the liquidation of the black-owned footwear company Drip. The bank seized millions of rands of the company's funds following an alleged breach of exchange control regulations.
Gauteng Finance and Economic Development MEC Lebogang Maile has emphasized the importance for township businesses being educated on foreign exchange laws to prevent future violations. Maile says ideally the central bank should find a legal way for the funds to be accessed, and they should also educate small businesses trading in foreign currencies.
The township economy issue comes as a result of DRIP being having been founded in Ivory Park, which is a township, and we were encouraged by the fact that we have a company that has been founded in the township, and it has managed to transition and participate in the mainstream economy. And they've been 5 years now in existence, and we are saying 5 years after hard work, we think that if there's something that can be done to make sure that we propel them to the next 5 years and possibly many more years, let's help them. They have committed a mistake and they are admitting, and they've said they've been able to regroup and look at whatever that is required by South African Reserve Bank.
Professor at the University of Witwatersrand, Tsepo Mangalo, has weighed in, saying while the MEC had good intentions, the approach could have been handled more appropriately. Professor Mangalo believes that the situation at DRIP should not have escalated to this level and suggests that the rehabilitation of the company should take place after the relevant exchange control regulations are completed.
It could be a matter for the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, where they've got a number of grants and also programs for training that the founders of DRIP can actually qualify for. And in order for them to be able to raise enough money to comply with whatever penalty that would have been issued by the South African Reserve Bank, they should then be in the process of getting into some form of training through one of the agencies of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, where they would be, fully trained with regard to compliance governance. And I think, the Department of Trade and Industry, if it doesn't have enough, sort of resources for them to undertake that kind of training, they can always contract with Department or Institute of Institute of Directors in Southern Africa that has programs like compliance governance that they can take the founders of DRIP into, so that they would not find themselves in a situation where compliance is a problem.
Mangalo says it is important for this matter to be handled correctly to avoid giving an impression that regulations that landed South Africa on the grey list are not being complied with. Meanwhile, the South African Reserve Bank declined to comment on the matter. Last month, the bank gazetted its decision about the forfeiture of DRIP Group money to the state. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
South Africa's democracy brought with it new hopes, dreams and aspirations. Citizens who were previously marginalised, disadvantaged and discriminated against could now actively participate in the economy. Women have also been empowered and they seize opportunities when they are available. But what are the challenges they contend with and overcome to be in business? Let's take a look at the struggles and successes of one woman in a coastal town in the Western Cape.
The picturesque Simonstown, home to South Africa's largest naval base, known for its rich maritime history, dating back more than 200 years. Its scenic beauty attracts tourists and locals. The town has a restaurant popular with these visitors and residents. The owner started working here 30 years ago and never dreamed that the place would one day be hers.
I started here as a stripper, but it was not, some people would think it's stripping, but it's like cleaning the tables, and then from there doing the milky lane, doing the milkshakes and stuff.
30 years in, Eloise, there has been indeed an improvement in women participation in the economy, and there has been improvement indeed in the support that's there to enable women to participate in the economy and in particular in business. However, there still remains a gap in saying if only 22% of businesses that are here in South Africa are owned by women, how do we intentionally work to increase that number and to increase the ability for women to participate?
I had a struggle with this business because I got it it was a 2-year battle. High court case, because when I got this place was on tender, so I applied for it. And then because I'm a colored, apparently it was said I'm a colored, I'm a woman, that's why I got it. But I never went to the media stating that it was a racial thing, nothing like that. I just pushed through.
As most women do, Palani experienced bullying at the hand of the man who applied for the tender.
And I had to pass him every day. And this guy actually went to court. He tried to ban me from coming on the square. They said, but that's a public place. So he banned me from coming on the square. But I still came because I was selling prawns and stuff to the guys on the square, bacon and stuff, just to survive.
There is definitely an issue of prejudice and bullying and discrimination against women. And simply, and I think I said this before, if you think traditionally the role of a woman, one would say the role of a woman is in the kitchen, and therefore their primary responsibility is to look after home and to look after the family. And now we are seeing a rise of women who say, I want to be more than that. I want to be more than a primary caregiver. I want to participate in industry, in building enterprise and contributing actively in our economy.
Palani took over the restaurant as an owner in December 2017, 23 years after she first started working here. Her journey as an entrepreneur was fraught with challenges before she even started. As an aspirant entrepreneur, she was not even aware of the costs of legal fees for business matters.
When the guy said, 2,500 before you say anything, just to speak to us. And then we spoke, and then I asked plus minus. He said, no, if you bring me the court paper, it's going to cost someone 10,000 to read it. And I'm looking at Sebastian, I'm like, what? And he said, no, this is the beginning. You have to put down 45,000 rand. That's just the first section of this whole thing. And then when I walked out of there, I was crying because I've done nothing wrong. And you know, when it was like 30-something rand, 35 rand or 33 rand a minute. When the first bill came, I'm like, because when we had meetings, I can talk. But that minute, I didn't know that I was billed for that minute. So the first bill that came, it was ridiculous.
It was again the previous owners who came to her aid and paid the lawyer's fees. When Palani started the business, she applied for funding through the National Empowerment Fund, which is designed to support black-owned businesses and promote economic participation from previously disadvantaged persons. She heard back from the NEF only after the restaurant was up and running and doing well.
That's the reality of most small business owners, is that when we apply for funding, and it doesn't matter what institution you apply for, if the turnaround time of coming back with a response, a yes or a no, takes long, it means you might find yourself like the lady you spoke to, where you had to make alternative plans for you to access the support that you need, or the true reality is that some of the businesses don't even survive to tell a tale because they die simply because somebody took forever to make a decision. So for me, it is important that in our support for small businesses, we understand that we can't take 12 months, we can't take 6 months to make a decision.
This was almost Palani's story.
The previous people that I worked for, they came on board and they said, friend, you know what? We'll help you through this journey. They got me some lawyers, we just stick out, just hold on. So it was a 2-year battle. It was all my stuff that I had in my garage, I had to eventually sell it because, you know, you had to stay afloat. And then eventually when I eventually got my keys 2 years later, I had my keys and that was the only thing I had. I had no money. I had no equipment because it was all sold out. But for some reason, I just felt like everything will come together. Then the one guy called me and he said, Fred, what do you need? I said, listen, I don't have money. I said, I didn't ask you if you don't have money. I asked you what do you need? Because he's got a construction business. So he came here in his crew, and the bill came up to over 300,000 rand. He said, you know what, for the next year, don't think about it. I give you 1 year, and after that year, then you come and then you give me a payment plan. And that for me was amazing.
The restaurant is thriving now, teeming with tourists and locals. But it was a tough journey.
And it was difficult because, people were thinking that I was talking about an imaginary restaurant. Because when it was in the newspaper that I got the restaurant, I was excited, I was telling people about it. 3 months went, 6 months went, a year went, it's 2 years, I still don't have the business. And I know one day I went to church and there was a message that says that you must just have faith as a mustard seed. And I'm sitting there, and as I'm sitting in church, it's like that preaching was just for me, and I changed my whole mindset. I went home, I prayed about it, I said, Lord, thank you very much. I claim it.
Palani pursued a dream, but almost gave up on it after receiving an offer from a well-meaning former employer.
We're going to Namibia, and then you can run the accommodation. And we'll give you like a percentage that's yours. And I went home and I went to go tell my husband, and he said, why do you want to give something up that's going to be yours? To work for someone, the deal was that I'll get a place in Simonstown, I had a business car, a percentage of it. And I thought about it, so I said, no man, I went to him the next day, I said, you know what, it's like my hand is by the door and I'm just about to open it and I'm leaving the handle. So it's been a 2-year journey, so I can't leave that.
Palani's induction to the small business industry was challenging and tough. But there is support for small businesses and small and medium enterprises. However, often entrepreneurs don't access the support and other opportunities available to them for various reasons.
Before 1994, a lot of women were not participating in the economy. And because they were not participating in the economy, it means our level of ownership of assets and our level of ownership of things that can be utilized as security and tools to help us invest in our businesses are non-existent. And if we go in with that understanding is that most women don't have assets to put up as security, and therefore that becomes a risk for them from a finance perspective, because you don't have anything to put up as security. If you're looking for a business loan to build or grow your business, the bank is not going to give you. We have to then say, how do we mitigate that? How do we recognize all these challenges that women are facing and the limitations that women have, and how do we create on the other side enablers that ensure that we can mitigate those risks and make sure that women can access those opportunities.
Small business owners and women in the SMME sector are encouraged to find a circle and network of support and to reach out to existing public and private support programs. For Palani, her dream became a reality because the two women who owned the restaurant before supported her on the journey. And she had the audacity to believe.
I'm still in awe because, it's still unbelievable.
Elrise Mashaba, SABC News, Simonstown.
Right, we are now turning our attention to the story that has sparked widespread outrage and debate this week. Pastor Mboro, a controversial figure, has taken the law into his own hands, using pangas and a firearm to remove 2 children from a school in Katlehong, east of Johannesburg. The community is up in arms, and the incident has raised critical questions about the role of faith leaders in our society. The actions of Pastor Mboro have left many wondering, where do we draw the line between faith and the law? Is this a case of a faith leader overstepping their bounds, or a desperate attempt to protect his community? Joining me this afternoon to help make sense of this complex issue is Professor Musa Mkhulu, a congregational pastor and a spiritual leader of the Emmanuel Lutheran Community Church, and he brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to this discussion. Professor, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Gustav. Allow me to say Happy Women's Month to all the women of South Africa who are working very hard. Let them love each other and push each other to prosperity. South Africa is one of the most prosperous countries in Africa. Let's embrace everyone.
Thank you so much.
That is by way of greeting.
Thank you so much for that greeting. But what were your initial thoughts on this incident with Pastor Mboro when you first became aware of it?
Well, it was surprising, not surprising. I must point out that the road to becoming a pastor is a very complex road because it's got lots of spirituality in it. Firstly is the call, and then it's the preparation. The preparation is the actual education. A person like myself went to doctoral level just to understand theology and the scriptures. And then after that, you get commissioned to actually go to do the work of Christ. Now, the work of Christ is centered around Christ himself as a role model in terms of how he conducted himself and what he said as the foundations of his church. One of the central themes in Christ's ministry was the issue of peace. Now, he always said, peace I live with you, peace I live with you. For a reason that those who then inherit from him and become pastors of the Lord should know that peace is at the center. And that is why, for example, when you go to ministry school or Bible college or university, there is a course there that is called pastoral care, which teaches you how in the community you behave like a social worker, more preaching doing counseling and helping people who are inflicted to deal with their difficulties. Now, Pastor Mboro had a problem, a family problem, between his son and his son's in-laws, etc. Under normal circumstances, Pastor Mboro would have approached other pastors to guide him on how to deal with the issue without him getting himself emotionally and physically and violently involved in the whole brouhaha. There's a problem there, but I hope that he will one day understand that he does not have a role in the world of violence.
So after that explanation, what would you think motivated him to take the law into his own hands and to remove those children from the school?
Well, it's a long story. According to what I heard, that the mother of the children passed on during April, and then they stayed with maternal grandparents, basically. And they go to the school where the grandmother is working there, possibly as a teacher. And then, so the whole thing had started last week on Friday, the whole confrontation. And I think they were not finding each other on the issue of custody of the children. That's why I think biblically and from the Christian point of view, he should have go and look for the third person, or third party to take him through. He got angry, obviously, and decided to do away with his spiritual calling and depend on himself. Now, on himself as a person, he felt also inadequate. So he had to arm himself with machetes, axes, and guns, and so on. That goes against the spirit of Christianity. And one day, so I saw him saying that the followers of Christ were carrying machetes and swords, etc. He should not have stopped there. He should have stopped at the point where, when Peter cut the ear of one of Christ's attackers, Christ took back that ear and fixed it, because as a message that violence and bloodletting is not part of the Christian faith.
So how do the actions of Pastor Mboro then reflect on the broader faith community? How do you feel about this as a pastor yourself? Are you still there? It seems as though he's frozen there and we can't see if he's going to speak to us right now. We're speaking about Pastor Mboro this afternoon, but we're going to try and fix that technical situation and continue our conversation. You're watching Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. We'll be back right after this. You're watching Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. We're discussing this Pastor Mboro issue and we're talking to Professor Musa Mkhulu, and he's back with us on the line now. Technical issue resolved. Professor, thank you for being with us. Can I ask you, how can faith leaders effectively navigate complex community disputes while still maintaining their spiritual authority, as you explained earlier?
Well, let's look at the role of a pastor in society and possibly outside of church. Usually they are referred to as Baba, a father. They become a father figure to orphans. They become a father figure to all people who have social problems and some people who grow up under very strange circumstances. And whenever people have problems, they usually run to a pastor. Even during the days of the struggle for liberation, it was pastors and the church who accommodated those who were fighting with the oppression of the apartheid system. But what has happened in the past, maybe say 30 years or so, there has been a sudden explosion in the form of charismatic churches. Now, these are usually one-man churches that are basically partly church and partly business. Now, sometimes, and everyone sometimes doubts the level of preparation in terms of what kind of education did they receive to prepare for their roles as pastor, not just in church, but also in society. Because once you repel your society and you arm against the community, then you can expect more conflict to come back to you, because you have moved away from what is generally accepted as the role of a pastor in church and society. Now, how can they position themselves in terms of spiritual authority? Pastors must have networks, work with themselves, among themselves, and also keep on reading and understanding the scriptures and the books and the theology and the doctrines that explain their role not only in serving Christ, but also in serving society. Christ says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Then you take up a machete and a gun and an axe. You go to attack your neighbor. Where is the love? So they are seen generally by society as the spreaders of love. And they make mistakes because they are human. But what we saw in terms of Pastor Mboro was a little bit too much attacking a school. Schools and churches used to be very closely associated, especially when the missionaries came here. It's not a place to attack. My advice would be to say pastors must maintain pastoral networks, and when they have problems, there must be a place where they can report without resorting to violence of the world.
So let's explore this issue about spiritual authority a bit more, like you explained now. Do you see the concept of spiritual authority basically being abused in the way that it gives a pastor, such as yourself or anyone, power over people? You explained churches being businesses, also having power over people's money.
Yes, no, it's slightly problematic, but it's a phase, as Christ had said, that these kinds of prophets would at some stage arrive. It's a phase which I'm praying must one day pass, because what happens, and I'm going to say it's rumors, but I'm also going to say it's not rumors, because some pastors went publicly to the Commission on Religion, Language, and all those rights some 4 or 5 years ago to tell the world on camera, in front of cameras, that they derive their strength sometimes from some kind of rituals that border on witchcraft, usually in West Africa and some countries like Malawi, etc. So because they recorded it themselves, it's not coming from me. I am saying that it's also there in the Bible, in the book of Acts. There were many people who tried to make money when they saw the first apostles making all sorts of healing people and so on. Then they thought maybe it could be something to make money out of it. And some of them died instantly, according to the scriptures in the book of the Acts. So I'm saying, unless you go straight to a university or a college that teaches you after you have discerned that you have a calling, and then you get commissioned accordingly, you are likely to run into lots of problems because if you use, for example, witchcraft to become a pastor, you can see already there's a disaster there. However, other problems have come from the mainline church, which maybe, let me say, from the year 312 AD, started introducing a lot of bureaucratic stuff so that they could support the Roman Empire into the Christian faith. And that has driven some of those who feel called and commissioned away from the mainline church. Now, when a church becomes too much full of laws and rules and regulations, that is also against the spirit of the Christ. So how do we do it? How do we solve the problem? We solve the problem through networks. A pastor who acts alone in some corner will always be suspect and will be at some stage open to disasters.
Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. It's fascinating to talk to you. We can continue for the whole afternoon, but we have to move on. That was Professor Musa Khulu, who is a congregational pastor and he's a spiritual leader at the Emmanuel Lutheran Community Church. This is Weekend Review. We'll be back right after this.
Get ready for an exhilarating journey throughout the day with the power-packed lineup on SABC News. Start your morning live with Sakina and Leanne as they bring you the freshest updates. Ayanda sets the agenda with breaking news and a sneak peek into the day's headlines. Nompu and Nastasia are on point with the latest in business stories and market updates. Unati will provide a bird's-eye view of SA Today, including in-depth analysis to keep you informed. Get the full view. Join Bongiwe and Mfundo as they navigate through all the events shaping the world around you. The influential and powerful will face the nation to account to Clement Maniatella, offering you insights and perspectives that matter. Don't miss out on the conversations shaping our society. And for the late edition news, Mpho brings you the top stories as we wind down into the night. Stay tuned. This is SABC News, independent, impartial.
Welcome back to Week in Review. Now, the Not In My Name civil rights and social justice movement has written to the public protector requesting an investigation into the 4 presidential imbizos which have cost taxpayers 44 million rand during the months leading up to this year's national and provincial government elections. Now, amid criticism that the presidency had spent 44 million of taxpayer money on an 18-month series of presidential imbizo, the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, said it was mischievous to reduce the engagement events to rands and cents. Now, to talk more on this, we are now joined in studio this afternoon by the president of Not In My Name International, Siyabulela Gentile. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to you.
So tell us about your decision to write to the public protector.
Of course, we are concerned as members of Not In My Name, as ordinary citizens of this country. And we made a decision. I personally wrote the letter to the public protector to try and make sense of this outrageous amount of monies that were used on these presidential imbizos. We're asking the public protector to make sense of that and also try and assist us in elucidating these costs, because there's allegations of cost inflations. And if you sit down and look at the 4 events that would cost taxpayers money, 44 million, it sort of legitimizes the concerns and the suspicions around the figures thereof. And so we have written to the public protector to say, you know what, please assist us in interpreting this thing. It is their responsibility in the interest of constitutional democracy, in the interest of protecting the public. And we are hoping that this time around the public protector will indeed protect the public and do the right thing.
What do you make of the words of Vincent Magwenya there, the presidential spokesperson, saying this is not about rands and cents, you can't reduce it to rands and cents?
Vincent Magwenya represents a government that does not care about the citizens of these people. So we're not surprised by his sentiment. In fact, he did mention it that that's how the president feels. And so it's nothing new. It's nothing that is surprising. The president of this country is aloof. He's totally detached from the realities, the lived realities of the people of this country. You are living in a country whereby over 30% unemployment rate. You've got a significant amount of percentage of youth living below the poverty line. You've got communities without water, without proper infrastructure. In fact, South Africa remains the most unequal country in the world. And so how you then justify the spending of 44 million rands on public meetings, it doesn't really make sense. It shows that they are not in tune with our struggles as ordinary citizens of this country. So I'm not even moved by the sentiments of Vincent Magwenya. I know that he represents a government that doesn't care about me. And so, but I've also got a responsibility as a leader of a civil rights movement to raise issues, because there's a lot of South Africans who don't know that 44 million was used in these gatherings that they were attending. And so we feel that though these gatherings are important, there could be a way that they could be, done without necessarily spending such huge, outrageous amounts of money. This is tantamount to financial mismanagement and the abuse of state resources.
Have you heard anything back from the public protector yet? What do you want to hear back?
Yeah, we have heard from the public protector. She has acknowledged our letter, and they've requested that they are given 10 days to make an assessment. I think that's standard procedure, to make an assessment of whether they can, the investigation falls in line with their scope or not. And so I think by the end of this coming week or early that other week, the following week, we should be able to hear from them. And just to say that, there's been a lot of, there's a growing narrative that this lady is actually a president protector, not the public protector. So we are going against that public narrative to say that we are challenging her to investigate this. And so it remains to be seen, and the onus is on her in the office to let us know if they will be going ahead with this investigation or not. But definitely, one thing that we are sure of is that we are not going to take this lying down. We're going to proceed to make noise around this issue until we are convinced that indeed these amounts of monies that were spent on these imbizos were worth it. And also just to say that since there are there any changes since they've been handling this, these imbizos have been going on since 1994, as Makwenya said. But are we seeing, are we getting any return on investment on them, and what is it that can be done better? And we want to be part of that conversation, because at the end of the day, we live in this country, we want what's best for this country. But until we call for accountability and transparency, politicians are going to continue to take us for a ride.
Do you accept that it is necessary for the president of the country to engage with communities, to go to them, and that there will be a cost?
I would say that my biggest concern around this issue is that somewhere someone is not doing their work, especially below that local government. I do believe that it is important for the president of the country, to engage with the people that he leads. However, not at such an expense. There should be people who are who are reporting on the lived and material conditions of the people of this country. It should not take a state president to go and ask people, what are your challenges, when there's mayors, when there's local councillors, when there's provincial government. And so we feel that there could be another way of doing this. But it shows that, again, our leaders and the people that have put into power, one, don't care about the people of this country, and again, they are totally detached. And it cannot be that you are leading people yet you don't live in the same community. And it's why, as the Not In My Name movement, we've always made a call that local government, for example, must be depoliticized. I'll make you a quick example. There's allegations. I spent the past week in Rhodes University, and I've spoken to a few people who said to me, actually it looks like the mayor of Makhanda does not stay in Makhanda. And so it then makes sense that when the president comes in such areas, for an example, then they need to make a halabaloo out of it and hire stages and marquees and make an event out of a very simple exercise. And it's not only in Makhanda where I've had such stories. You've got areas like Tshwane there where you have, a councillor staying in Silver Lakes, but is leading the people of Mamelodi, different communities. And so it should be mandatory, and it should be, these people need to be forced to be part of the communities that they are leading. And if they can do that, then there really is no need for government to be spending so much money just for the president to engage with the people. It shows that they are not aware of what is happening in their communities, and it's unfair and it is criminal to the people of this country only to just go to them because you are going towards elections. And in fact, this is what they did right now. This government of the ANC, they went to the people a few months before elections, which raises another suspicion of, could it not be that this money was not fueled or channeled towards the campaign of the African National Congress? Okay, so what outcome are you hoping for, almost from a legal point of view? Well, we need the public protector to assist us to make sense of the numbers. And if there are, any financial mismanagement, heads must roll. People must account monies that are, taxpayers' monies that have been used must be paid back, and whoever is responsible must be held accountable. And so also part of this exercise is to say that to these guys, we are watching you, and we are not going to allow crime and criminality and corruption to continue with impunity. We are for now, we just want the investigation to be done. Yes, the Minister of Kokta did say that there's documents available, but, as an ordinary citizen sitting there without, the background and the knowledge of how government works, I might not be able to make sense of the numbers. So the public protector must come in, hire whoever needs to be hired, the auditors and people who know the numbers, and tell us if this thing makes sense, if costs were not overinflated, and if everything was done according to the law. But I'm telling you now, we are really, really suspicious about this kind of activities.
It seems as though Vincent Mogwenya agrees with you on this point, because he noted that if there were violations of the law, it must be fully investigated and the perpetrators must be duly punished.
If we agree, then let the public protector continue to do her work. In fact, we will be getting advice as well as to which other avenues are there that we can use, to further advance this particular cause. So I'm happy that at least he manages to make some sense in everything that he was saying. But at the end of the day, this government doesn't care about the people of this country. But 2026 is coming. We are going to make a statement, same way we did in 2024 elections.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. And that was the president of Not In My Name International, Siyabulela Gentile. This is Week in Review on the SABC News channel. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. Now, the Durban Magistrates Court has heard that more arrests could be on the cards in connection with the murder of Keenan, aka Forbes, and Tebelo Tibbs Motswane. The state told the court during a brief hearing that statements have been taken down from people of interest. 5 of the 7 suspects face charges of murder, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, possession of unlawful firearms and ammunition, and money laundering. Forbes and Motswane were gunned down in Durban's Florida Road in February last year.
The state maintains that it has a watertight case and says it is following the money trail connected to one of the suspects and alleged mastermind, Mzwitemba Gwabeni. Gwabeni was allegedly paid 800,000 rand by a prominent Durban business person, Sydney Mfundo Gaba, the day after the murder. Gwabeni earlier said that the money was part of a business transaction. In requesting the postponement, State Prosecutor Advocate Lawrence Gaba said that the state needed to conclude a financial investigation before it can proceed. The state also says that it is awaiting the extradition of 2 suspects from Eswatini to be finalized, but also has not ruled out more arrests.
Certain persons of interest were approached for warning statements, which statements were obtained with certain explanations, which explanations needed to be followed up, part of which involves financial investigations. On those 2 reasons, without explaining further, Your Worship advised us as the state to make this request with the hope that on the 29th, based on whatever has been uncovered, we might have more than the 5 accused before court.
Legal expert Abigail Ngobeni says the financial investigation will shed more light on the case.
On the last occasion when Gwabeni was here, he produced incomplete bank statement, omitting particularly the issue of 800,000 as well as how the 800,000 was distributed. So with the 204, it will allow them to go straight to the bank, draw a bank statement for all the accused persons, even for the prominent business person, to check whether there was a flow of money before. Can the explanation that says it was a purely business transaction stands the test of time when it's brought to court?
Ngobeni says the cases in South Africa and Eswatini should be joined.
I think as well they are calculating the issue of appeal. Remember that if at all, which we are anticipating that the magistrate in Eswatini granted the extradition, we are expecting the accused persons, the defense there, perhaps to exercise the right to appeal that particular decision, have that ventilated. But if at all they abandon that, it means they are coming back to South Africa will be quicker. But if they explore that avenue, then that means it should be ventilated in Eswatini prior to them being extradited this side. So the longer adjournment is to accommodate that process. And of course, that will make sense for them to have them tried at one time, other than having a separation of trial, which will then see witnesses testifying twice.
The matter has been postponed to the 29th of November. For SABC News, I am Jade Paulser in Durban.
Music lovers and fans showed up in their numbers to remember their music star Bokang Molele, popularly known as Malome Vector, who perished in a motor accident in the Free State. The 32-year-old award-winning artist was travelling to shoot a music video in Lesotho when he and two other occupants then lost their lives.
The music fans, friends and family members filled up the Lahakwe Recreational Hall in Maseru to celebrate their star, better known as Malome Vector. The award-winning Malome Vector made his breakthrough after being signed by an established music label in Johannesburg, but soon parted ways as he established his own music stable.
He made us all proud. How no TV. What a price to pay. And then there was Dumelang Nereferikano Fate. You remember the minister because the status of being a minister was not good enough for to respect the South Africa than saying in the Malome Vector.
Friends and colleagues have come to pay their respects ahead of his funeral this weekend. I asked his manager whether upcoming artists are in any ways better prepared for this kind of a sudden turn of events.
My brother, it's difficult to prepare for such, because even if you can talk to any artist right now, they will tell you they are young. Malome Vector's mom was expecting his son to bury her, not the other way around.
Berry says that it is crucial for musicians to be financially smart and prepared for any eventuality.
It's possible to have trust funds for our kids in case we find ourselves in a situation like this, we leave something behind. Yeah, it's just normal to prepare and get right people like lawyers, financial advisors, to be part of our art. In most cases, what always goes wrong is to aim high without looking at things like this. I don't want to lie. We are one of those who didn't expect to be in a situation of this nature at this time.
And to those that worked close to him, the loss is unimaginable.
Our industry, entertainment industry, is still in its infancy, even at 2024. It means we still have more people who are going to use the same route to go to SA, because that's where we find Mizunzunyan. And we can't just stop going there, because that's where we find food to put on the table. I wish government can see that this is wrong. We have to be inside our country. We have to, the economy should just change, because we have a talent, we have landscape, we have everything. What we need is just support from our government so that we can stop going abroad, we can stop going to SA for the better jobs or for the better careers.
We have lost. And I would like to send my condolences to his followers, his family, especially his wife.
And you would never know when is the right time or when God will decide to take you. So that is very hard. But we just have to live and keep faith in God.
I'm Rapelang Khatebe for SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Right, that's it for today. Join us again tomorrow at 12 when we will be taking a look at the week ahead. The news continues at the top of the hour. Take care.